Hey there. I'm excited to announce this to you today. This is what you've been waiting for in your spiritual quest. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm finally ready to announce it that it's ready to go. It's the Grief to Growth Community Circle. Now, this is a sanctuary where like-minded souls are united in their journey through grief and towards personal transformation. It's more than just a place. It's a beginning. It's a commitment to growth and understanding. Here you're finding not just a community, but you're entering a circle of trust and depth. You're going to engage with interactive coursework. You'll dive into exclusive podcast episodes and partake in discussions that illuminate the path from mourning to empowerment. This is a realm where every question is honored and every individual's journey is validated. To be part of this exclusive circle, visit us at grieftogrowth.com/community or look for the chat icon at the bottom of every page on the main website. Remember that entry is a privilege because I want to ensure that every member is as dedicated and genuine as you are. You must apply to join, but the journey within is worth every step. So go ahead and join us today. Check it out, grieftogrowth.com/community, and I look forward to seeing you there.
Hi there. Welcome to Grief to Growth podcast. Your host is Brian Smith, spiritual seeker, best-selling author, grief survivor, and life coach. Brian believes that the worst tragedies of life provide the greatest opportunity for growth. Brian says he was planted, not buried, and he is here to help you grow where you've been planted by the difficulties in life. In each episode, Brian and his guests will share what has helped them to survive and thrive. It is his sincere hope this episode helps you today.
Hey, everybody, this is Brian Smith back with another episode of Grief to Growth. And today I've got with me Michelle Freed. Michelle is a certified hypnotherapist, and she's a professional remote viewer. And you may be wondering what a remote viewer is, and we'll talk about what that is. Michelle's experience in operational targets, working with detectives to help solve crimes and find missing people, as well as teaching the skill of remote viewing in her 6-week training program. Michelle is the former producer for the popular radio show created by Art Bell that's called Midnight in the Desert. And currently, Michelle will be launching her new endeavor as an entertainment publicist. And maybe we'll talk about a little bit today, too. So we're going to talk about, I think, hypnosis, which Michelle is a professional at, and also remote viewing. So with that, I'd like to welcome to Grief to Growth, Michelle Freed.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Hey, Michelle, it's good to have you on. These are a couple of subjects that I'm really intrigued by, and I don't know a lot about. So I'm hoping today to learn something from you. So let's start with remote viewing. First of all, could you tell our listeners what remote viewing is?
So there's a lot of people that have different definitions of remote viewing, and the remote viewing that I'm talking about is the type of remote viewing that they did in the military back in the 70s. And it was a program called Stargate. And what our government did was they grabbed some scientists from the Stanford Research Institute and put together a protocol for the military so that they can use their subconscious and project it to a target and gather intel. And what United States found out is a lot of the other countries, China, Russia, a lot of other countries had already been experimenting with these things. And so then we put together a program. Again, it's called Stargate, and you can look that up. There's a ton of information about it. And so in the 90s, they declassified the project, and a lot of these military guys, when they retired, because what they learned through the process is that anybody can remote view, and because we're all intuitive. And if you learn these, this protocol, these skills, it will help you. It's a lot of practice. It's a lot of work, but pretty much anybody can do it. And so they were teaching classes, and I took a bunch of classes from some of the popular people you may have heard of is Joe McMoneagle, Lynn Buchanan, Russell Targ. These are all my teachers. And then also John Vivanco. And there's a movie. I don't know. Have you ever heard of the movie Men Who Stare at Goats?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. So that is a silly kind of parody, lightly based on what happened.
Yeah.
And person who played George Clooney's part is I believe it's Lynn Buchanan, one of the ex-military guys. And so I'm obsessed with it, and I practice all the time to the point where I'm pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you're dealing with your unconscious part of yourself, it's not 100% reliable, but it can give good data.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was working with detectives to find missing people and other various cases in the government. Recently, we were asked to remote view the Olympics. They wanted to know who or what the top three, top three things that they should prepare for, top three like concerns. And so we did that, and there's various other ones. I was also, I don't know if I told you this, but I was on Ancient Aliens too. We did an episode on with the remote viewing, and we were at East Eddy Ranch. Have you ever heard of East Eddy Ranch?
I have not, no.
It's this ranch in Washington and near Mount Adams. And there seems to be a lot of weird things that happen there. Mm-hmm. And so we went there, and they do this Skywatch where they're looking for UFOs. And so they do that every night. Mm-hmm. And they just put together a whole episode of us remote viewing, if there's aliens or something like that, which was kind of a fun thing to be doing. But it looked like our data was mostly saying that they were satellites and not UFOs. So, but anyway, it was a really exciting experience.
So let's kind of break this down a little bit, because first of all, there's so much I want to explore as you talked about. First of all, there was a government program for remote viewing, so the government acknowledged this was real. They brought these people in, and I want to let everybody know the people that you mentioned that you've trained with are some of the top names in this field. I have heard their names. I've heard a little bit about this. But the government acknowledged this. They know it was a real thing. They got real results. So maybe you can give us some examples of some of the results that they got from this remote viewing they did.
Well, if you look up Joe McMoneagle, it's hard for me to tell you without you seeing it. Mm-hmm. But if you look up Joe McMoneagle, and you will see his actual sessions, because what we do is we sketch things out. So you have to look at what he sketched out versus what the target was, so that you can get a really good idea. For example, so one of the things about remote viewing that's very important for people to understand is that it's done in a scientific way. Mm-hmm. So the viewers, which I'm a viewer, we are blind to the target. So the project manager will set up a project, and he'll come up with a question, and we call that the secret question. And we have no idea what that question can be. It could be anything in the world. Mm-hmm. It could be, the pyramids, and it could be anything, mm-hmm. Where, it would say like, go to the location, say it's a missing person. If it's a missing person, what they would write on there, they would definitely tell us it's a missing person, but they would not tell us anything else. So we know that, so we could prepare, because it could be traumatic. Mm-hmm. So it's a missing person, but then the secret question would be, describe the current location of so-and-so, whatever their name is, or describe the physical condition of whoever it is. Mm-hmm. And we don't ever see that. We just
So you don't see the secret question. Okay.
Right. We get a number, just a random number. And they'll just email me a number and say, hey, do a session. And I'm like, okay. And then I do what I was taught, and I create a session, and I email it back to them. And that's really how it works.
So this is really open-ended. So, mm-hmm. And you said you mentioned earlier, you're using your subconscious to get this information. Is that correct?
Exactly. So
Okay.
what you're doing is projecting your subconscious. So it's about intention.
Mm-hmm.
So what I do is when I receive this target number, my mind already, when you sit, what a session looks like, you're sitting at your desk with paper in front of you and you write down the number. Well, you first want to cool yourself down. You just want to kind of set aside your everyday life and
Mm-hmm.
kind of invite yourself into, okay, I'm in remote viewing, world zone right now. And you cool down and then you just focus and you're engaging all your senses, um, everything about you. And you're asking yourself questions. What do I smell? What do I taste? What do I feel? And what we've learned, that and why this works is there's actually, Dr. Is it, I forgot his name. I have to find out his name, but he did this experiment,
Mm-hmm.
that he took a bunch of college students and he set up a project where he put a whole bunch of pictures on a computer screen and he connected them up so that you can keep track of all their vitals, like their blood pressure, their heart rate, their brain waves, everything. And what he did was he had them advance through the pictures, and scattered through the pictures randomly, he put some provocative pictures in there.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to know if we can predict a picture before it comes. So he would have, a tree, a leaf, a rock, a building, whatever. And then he would stick in there like maybe, people kissing, or maybe a bra, or, something provocative he would put in there. And he noticed that the picture before the provocative one, their vitals would actually spike.
Yeah.
And so did you hear of this?
I
don't
have
know if
heard of
you've
this.
What's his name? Doctor what?
I can't remember, but actually, this precognition thing has been tested over and over again. So I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but it's actually one of the most common experiences or experiments when it comes to psi type of abilities.
Exactly. And so what we're doing is we are engaging our senses when we're doing this, because we can. And that's really what we're tapping into. And it's incredible.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey there, something I want to tell you about today. My podcast platform, Buzzsprout, has recently made it easier for me to allow you to support me financially. Go to www.grieftogrowth.com/subscribe. That's grief2growth.com/subscribe. And once you're there, you can sign up to support me financially. Now, you can do it for as little as $3 a month, or of course, as much as you'd like. If you do that, you'll get access to bonus episodes, and you'll see those in the regular feed. They'll have a lock on them. But when you become a subscriber, you'll actually get access to your own private feed, and you'll be able to listen to the regular podcast along with the bonus podcast for the subscribers. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for sharing the podcast. And I want to thank those of you who support me financially. Have a great day, and on to the episode. So I didn't realize that was actually considered part of the remote viewing genre, I guess, for lack of a better word. And you mentioned Joe McMoneagle, and I want to tell people how to spell that because it's almost impossible to spell. So it's McMoneagle. But you could also look up Russell Targ, and his last name is Targ. It's a lot easier to spell.
Yes, Russell Targ.
And I do remember hearing some experiments like where they would send people out to like somewhere on a street somewhere.
Yeah.
So tell me about those.
That's called the Outbounder. That's what Russell Targ does.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not doing conferences right now, but every year they have a conference in Vegas, and they make everybody at the conference do this. And it's so much fun. So basically he'll lead you into a session because a lot of people don't know how to do it. And he'll do like a quick and dirty explanation, just kind of do this. And in the meantime, he sends people off, and nobody knows where they're going to be, with a video camera, and they go somewhere. And then while they're there, we're tuning into them and their location. Again, we're engaging. What does it smell like there? What is the ambiance? What does it feel like? What impressions are we getting? Is there a structure here? And an important thing is that we never use nouns. We just describe things, because that could, what Joe always says is, in order to be a really good remote viewer, you have to give up being human.
Yeah.
And what does he mean by that? Well, he means that humans need everything to make sense. So if I asked you to describe an apple, and our normal things would be, I did that reverse, but if I just said it's red, shiny, and round, a lot of people will say apple, right? Because they'll put it all together. That's what humans do. That's what makes us exist and be successful, that we want to make sense of it. So that's an apple. But the problem is when you say red, shiny, and round, that in remote viewing and when we're engaging in our subconscious, because our subconscious doesn't understand words or anything like that, they're more symbolic. It could be a fire truck. And then you put somebody in the wrong direction, especially if you're working on an operational case where it was important to say that there's a fire truck there versus, oh, there was an apple there. So what we do is, as a viewer, you're just reporting what you perceive. As an analyst, then you will decode what somebody says and make it, and, draw the picture from it. And so that's what's really important to know.
Yeah, because there was something, I don't know if you're familiar with this incident, because I remember hearing about it, where I think it was Joe McMonagle was viewing like a submarine or something.
Oh, right. The Russian, the secret. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, he I don't remember what the tasking would be the secret question. The task, I don't remember the words, but that's a very popular case where he was getting intel. That was a Russian secret vessel, I guess I could say, and nobody knew about it. So that's what was so incredible. And that's one of the things that we realize or kind of mark as this is how we know it works, because we had positive feedback from it.
Yeah.
And then Ingo Swann, did you ever hear that name, Ingo Swann?
I'm not familiar with that name, no.
So we call him the godfather of remote viewing, because he, back then when the scientists were putting the protocol together, they found at the time one of the best psychics in the world to help them put this together. And so he was using remote viewing, and way before we even knew this, he was remote viewing something in space, and he got the information that I think it was Jupiter has rings around it. And everyone thought he was crazy. Like, what are you talking about? Jupiter doesn't have rings on it. He came up with a whole bunch of information about space. And then over time, see, feedback can take a long time to get.
Right.
Over time, we were able to validate a lot of his sessions that there's no way he could have known.
Yeah.
And then back to Joe, he had a session that he was remote viewing Mars. And there's a YouTube video. You have to see it because you have to see his sketches. And he's a great artist. But they took the photos that they had of Mars next to his session, where he talks about this pyramid near a crater. And he drew it exactly how it shows up in the picture. And there's literally, he did this back in like the 70s or 80s. And the picture came to us in the 90s or 2000s. So, I mean, it's concrete evidence of that he was seeing something that there's no way we can do that. So.
Yeah. And that's the thing about, it's interesting, Michelle, as we're talking, I talk to skeptics about all sorts of phenomena. And they always say, well, there's no evidence for that. There's no data that backs this up. Whether it's mediumship or, anything. And when it comes to remote viewing, I know you and I talked about this earlier. We talked a few weeks ago. There is so much evidence that they don't even study it anymore. No one studies it to see whether it's real because it's been proven time and time again.
And I'm so glad you brought that up because I am part of a team that we put together scientific evidence that even they can't, argue with. So we recently did and peer-reviewed um, project or
Mm-hmm.
paper that was published in the Journal of Psychical Research, where we used dreams to predict a future outcome. We use dreams and remote viewing to predict a future outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we did was, and what's very important, and I think you will agree with this, is about the energy of intention, and that really surrounds everything in remote viewing, if not everything in life. So at night, on Friday nights, we set an intention that we're going to have a dream about a photo that's going to be showed to us. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did was, how they set up the project was we were wagering on a sporting event. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they took are you a sports fan?
I am, yes.
Okay, I don't want to offend you with the sports teams that I pick, but I have to pick the Cubs because I'm from Chicago.
Uh-huh.
So the Cubs, so you have the Cubs and I don't know, the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do is associate a photo with them. So the Cubs, we would say, is the ocean, and the Cardinals would be the desert. So the two photos are completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have no idea. That again is something that's secret. We do not know the teams. We know that we're wagering, or we know that the only thing we know as a viewer is that we're supposed to go to sleep and dream about a photo that's going to be shown to us after some game.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know if it's baseball, football, horse racing. We don't know anything. And so we go to sleep and say we dream about, something about water or a boat or anything that has something to do with water. And we wake up in the morning and we do a session, and we send in the session to the project manager.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were five of us, and she would look at all the sessions and she'd say, wow, 4 of these sessions had water in it. So I'm going to make a prediction that the Cubs are going to win. And then the game's played. And then the Cubs, of course, win. And they send us the picture of the water so that we get our feedback.
Wow.
So essentially what we did and what we're proving is we literally went into the future, got information, and brought it back.
Yeah,
That's what we did.
And this is the thing I also want to bring out about remote viewing, because I always thought of remote viewing as just like, okay, you can physically see where an object is now without laying your eyes on it. But when you and I talked earlier, we can actually remote view the future. We can predict events.
Right. Exactly. But here is a little, this gets into a very deep conversation, and I'm probably not even qualified to even go there. But because time is not fixed, the big question that we ask ourselves when we have these questions, and my jaw's on the floor while I listen to these really smart people talk about it, is that because it's not fixed, if you're observing it, then you can change it. Right. So, John Vivanco, there's another book that he came out with. He was in the 90s, one of the first civilian groups remote viewing in the 90s after it was declassified.
Mm-hmm.
And they had, I don't know if it was a CIA or some what they call 3-lettered organization.
Yeah.
Hired them to do counterterrorism. And they did a session where they were actually seeing a big stadium that was attacked. And there was a terrorist attack at this place.
Mm-hmm.
And they believe that it didn't happen because it could have altered what was going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
By viewing it, like we know, I don't know if you know the double slit theory, that
the observer effect. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so this is what people are talking, like, what's going on here? And I chime in and I'm like, well, I have a question. What if we can go into the future and, personally into our own future and say we have a decision to make? Like, should I marry this guy or should I not marry this guy?
Mm-hmm.
Go into the future, find that out, send the information back so that I make really good decisions. That's
Yeah.
we don't know, but
Yeah.
wouldn't that be a great handy thing? Like, can you think of so many things that you would want to like kind of find out about before it happens,
Yeah.
and
Well,
then just choose the other way?
you just made a really good point earlier, though, because we don't understand the nature of time. So,
Right.
because one of the theories in time is everything happens at the same time. There is no linear time. That's just the way we perceive it. So
Right.
everything that has happened or will happen, you have to use time to even describe it. You could say it already has happened. It's so
Yeah.
that gets really, really deep, really fast.
So deep. Right.
But let's
Yeah.
talk about some practical applications of remote viewing. You said you've worked on missing person cases. So have you been able to locate people?
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'd like to say is I help,
Mm-hmm.
so my data helps them.
Mm-hmm.
One of the this was an unfortunate case. And I was getting information where it was kind of strange. I'm recalling it right now. And I remember in session, I was kind of a bird's eye view looking down at a subject, and it was male. And I could see the position he was in, and there was blood on his forehead and a big, huge rock by his head. And then there was a body of water. And then when I kind of opened up my view, opened up the aperture to a wider view, I could see a dirt road that led to a kind of like rundown structure. And it was kind of a foresty area with a lot of trees, and it was very detailed, just like I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can see, the detectives could triangulate, because I said some very important things. I said there was some kind of dirt road with a structure. I said there was a body of water nearby, and I said that it was a foresty area, and there was a rock.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do is, because they know where this is, and they will look at a map and triangulate. Okay, where is there somewhere where these things all occur in
Right.
this place? So what ended up happening is they were able to do this. And so here is the feedback. It was a male subject, college student, that went to that shack thing and got drunk. And then he walked over to the body of water,
Mm-hmm.
and got in a boat, and the boat capsized and bumped his head on it, and then he died.
Wow.
So I was a little off, because I didn't think he was in the water,
Mm-hmm.
and the rock must have been the boat. So things do get distorted in our minds,
Right.
but they're able to iron it out with, they can figure this stuff out. But
Yeah, well, that's amazing. So, missing persons, and you had also mentioned to me it's remote viewing can be used for past lives. Is that correct?
yeah, so
Okay.
so we practice a lot, and we're always looking for really kind of fun, exciting things that we could do to practice.
Mm-hmm.
So my partner, who we work with all the time, and we're also experimenting, like, hey, I wonder if you could do this. I wonder if you could do that. So again, the secret question was, he told me that my tasking was to go to a past life, and an important past life that has information that will help me become a better remote viewer.
Okay.
Okay. So that I didn't know any of that. So he just sends me, he goes, hey, Michelle, I got a practice for you. He gives me a number, and I sit down and do it. And so I had a lot of information in there. Just for me personally, it was just summing it all up. It was basically telling me that I need to, not be such a perfectionist, that I need
Okay.
to kind of let that stuff go and just be, more accepting of myself. And then there was a strong message in there about self-love.
Okay.
And so, so that's what I brought back from some life in the past.
So if someone lost something, could remote viewing help to find the object that they lost?
Yeah. So I'll tell you you're going to love this story because I use remote viewing and hypnosis.
Okay.
So, a guy calls me up and he rented a car, and the keys for this car he lost. And I don't know if you know, like some of these keys can be like $300 to replace.
Yes, I knew though. Yes.
Yeah. And so he's like, Michelle, you got to help me. I got to find these keys. Like, I don't know where they are. I'm like, all right. So I said, don't tell me anything else. And so I sit down with a paper and I start writing, some things and start tuning in. And one of the weirdest things, I kept getting a cat. And I'm like, a cat? I'm like, what is going on here? I got a cat, and then I had a metallic table-like thing, and then something like on the ground. So I was just like, okay, all right. So I just put that there. And then I decided to experiment, which I like to do. And so I called him up, and over the phone, I was able to hypnotize him, because one of the things about hypnosis is that our subconscious has permanent memory. Our subconscious stores everything. We talk about the Akashic records, everything, it's connected to that. So every single thing that has ever happened, every thought you had, every feeling you had is all stored in your subconscious. It's just that we can't bring them forward all the time, because otherwise we'd probably be going crazy. So in hypnosis, what we do is we kind of quiet your conscious, and then we open up your subconscious, and we bring the past into the future. Knowing that, I thought, okay, let's bring his past into the now. And so I put him into a deep state, and I brought him back to the last moment he remembered holding those keys. And I talked him through the day, and it was I was giggling to myself, because he remembered the actual, like, the dollar amount on his receipt. Like, do you remember the dollar amount on your receipts?
Yeah, no.
I don't. He remembered the dollar amount. He remembered everything, and then we get all the way to, I don't know, up until a certain point. And it turns out, as he was remembering this, is that he was, and this is where the cat comes in. He said that he was frantic that day because his cat was sick. And this whole thing surrounds the cat being sick, the whole thing. And he said that the cat was sick, and he was, in a way, starving the cat because it had a stomach problem, and not feeding it for a couple of days. And this was the day he had to give the cat food. So he frantically ran to the store to buy cat food. And so he was in a hurry. He wasn't thinking. He was just freaking out, having so many problems and stressed out for other reasons. He talked me through everything. And then he got home to give the cat this food. And so we got to this point where he just somehow got blocked and couldn't remember anymore. Because then I said, okay, where are the keys? And he's like, I don't know. He just, for some reason, couldn't get past that. So I thought, okay, let's just take a break. So I gave him a hypnotic suggestion, that you're going to go to sleep now, and in your dreams, you're going to know where the keys are. And when you wake up in the morning, you're going to walk right to the keys and find them. And he's like, okay, whatever. So I'm like, and I'm crossing my fingers, hoping this works.
Yeah, really.
So 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 next morning, I get a call at 10 o'clock and I'm like, "Hey, how are you doing?" He's like, "Oh my God, I had a horrible migraine." And I'm like, "Okay." And, I'm like sitting here on the edge of my chair. He's like, "But guess what?" I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Well, I found the keys. They were exactly where you said, under the metal stool, in the carpet, on the floor." And he thinks that the cat may have knocked it off the counter and it fell under the stool.
Wow.
So, yeah, so we used a combination,
Yeah.
and it kind of paid off.
Yeah.
So,
That's a really interesting example.
We'll get back to grief to growth in just a few seconds. Did you know that Brian is an author and a life coach? If you're grieving or know someone who is grieving, his book, Grief to Growth, is a best-selling, easy-to-read book that might help you or someone you know. People work with Brian as a life coach to break through barriers and live their best lives. You can find out more about Brian and what he offers at www.grieftogrowth.com, www.growth.com, or text growth, GROWTH, to 31996. If you'd like to support this podcast, visit www.patreon.com/grieftogrowth, www.patreon.com/GRIEF, to make a financial contribution. And now, back to Grief to Growth.
And I know you teach remote viewing. So if someone were to take your course, what would they expect to learn?
So the protocol. So we would learn the actual the steps that we do on paper. We learn how to engage our physical body and open up our senses. And not only are you learning, I guess, what you would say, like what you do on pen and paper, but the lessons are so profound that I have learned remote viewing, that trusting myself as a person and having more confidence, I gathered from this, and just having more of a knowledge of how we are as humans and how we react. You become more, I don't want to say, you become more intuitive and more, you learn how to, like, if you want to think, it's hard to put into words all the things, but you learn so much about, all right, here's one. So we have something called an AOL, and it stands for analytic overlay. A lot of the terms in remote viewing are the military terms.
Okay.
But the way I teach it, I use more civilian people terms. Okay. But AOL is a universal term. And when you have an AOL, that means that you are assuming something, or you're using a noun like the apple. Okay. And so they come up a lot because they do, and we have to just accept them. But I applied the idea of an AOL, the assumption, to my everyday life. And I started thinking about how many times in my everyday life do I AOL? Meaning, if somebody says something to me and I take it the wrong way, and that would be an AOL, because I'm assuming that they meant it that way. And it all of a sudden, it's like I never even thought of that in my everyday life, because I'm just thinking in my session, don't call it an apple, don't call it a bridge, don't call it a lamp,
Yeah.
But really, it's about not assuming. And I find I'm so much happier now checking things out with people and not assuming. And so that's one small thing that you learn. But any question that you have in the whole world, you can ask. One time I remote viewed what food I should stay away from. You can ask questions about, should I date this guy, or what's my future husband going to be like? Or even, can I communicate, my father passed away, and sometimes does my dad have a message?
Yeah.
Anything in the whole world that you want to ask, you can do that in remote viewing.
Michelle, as we talk about this, it seems like remote viewing is too small of a term. I mean, what you're talking about is really, what you're really, well, I mean, that seems like to me a very small subset of what you're describing. You're talking about totally opening up my intuition, tapping into that deeper, I guess, inner wisdom. Because you're talking about, mediumship, you're talking about psychic ability, as
Hmm.
far as, someone might go to see a psychic to say, should I marry this person? Should I take that job? Whatever.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, through this remote viewing, I can learn to tap into my own inner wisdom.
Hmm. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. I mean, you're right. And I think, when I run into people and I say remote viewing, they don't have the same image or picture of it as what I'm describing.
No, not at
And so
all.
you're right. We do need to kind of figure out a new word for it, remote sensing, or I'm not sure, but yeah, you're right. I
Well,
guess,
when you and I first talked, I thought about Joe McGonigal and Russell Targ and minutes stare at goats, and that's all kind of interesting. But I'm like, well, how am I going to use that in my daily life, right? And that's
mhm,
why I asked you that question about what am I going to learn, and if I take your course. But the more you and I talk, and I remember the first time we talked, you talked to me about seeing the future. I'm like, I didn't think that was part of remote viewing.
mhm.
So yeah, I think it sounds really, really interesting. And the fact that we can all do it is really intriguing.
Everyone can do it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about hypnosis, because I know it's another thing that you do. And you actually, I was going to ask you a question: are hypnosis and remote viewing related? But you've already tied in how they kind of are, and how you've used
Yeah.
both as tools. So what types of things can hypnosis help with?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi there, I'm really excited to tell you about my latest ebook. It's 4 lessons that you can learn from the near-death experience without going through all the trouble of dying to learn them. I've been studying NDEs for several years now. I am completely convinced that not only are they 100% real, but that there's some very universal wisdom that we can get from the near-death experience. And I've distilled that down in this book into 4 short lessons. And I've also given you all the reasons why I believe that NDEs are absolutely real. So go to www.grieftogrowth.com/NDE lessons to pick it up for free. www.growth.com/NDE lessons. I hope you enjoy it.
Well, hypnosis, a lot of it gets a bad rap because of Hollywood. But essentially, hypnosis is part of it's our who we are. We're in hypnosis all the time.
Yeah.
So a couple popular examples are if you're driving the car and you missed your exit, you were hypnotized by the road. Or if you're engaged in a movie and you're so into this movie and you didn't realize that somebody left the room or came in, that you're hypnotized. You're hypnotized every day when you're listening to commercials. They're giving you suggestions to drink a Coke. And my mouth is watering right now, and I don't even like pop. I said pop. Shoot. Yeah, everyone makes fun of me for saying pop.
I'm from
But
Ohio, so I say pop too.
oh, I love you. Okay,
Yeah.
good. So, but yeah, your mouth waters because they're giving you a suggestion. And just like I said before, I gave this guy the suggestion that he's gonna figure out where the keys are, let his brain process it. And when he wakes up, he's going to walk right to the keys. And that's what he did. And it's the same thing. You use that same idea to lose weight, to change any habits, quit smoking, to become more confident. It's all about, and then when you're doing suggestions, it's all about our words, what we choose to say, and our words. And I learned the biggest lesson from when my father passed away. I was fortunate to be with him, and he was always this kind of person that, didn't speak much. He didn't speak much. And when he did, he always had something very important to say. And even to the point where if you were on the phone, he would never say goodbye. He would say later, he wouldn't say that. So when he was dying, we were standing there and everyone's like, we love you, oh, you're the best dad. I love you. This whole beautiful kind of thing. And he had a little tear and he smiled and he said goodbye.
Oh, wow.
And it occurred, I'm like, oh, I just learned so much from that, because to me it said, only say what you mean. And I realized we're only given so many words in a lifetime,
Mm.
and we should choose them wisely.
Mm. Yeah.
And that's in hypnosis. We are choosing our words wisely. We don't want to say I'm tired. We don't want to say I'm fat, because whatever you put after I am is what you become, you get more of.
Oh,
Okay.
oh, yeah.
So, and it's a law of attraction, right? So,
Mhm.
and if you say, like my daughter, she one day, I'm so stupid. And I said, oh, you want more stupid? And she's like, no. And I said, well, then what do you desire? And she said, I want to be smart. I said, okay, then say I am smart. So we have to be careful, because our subconscious just hears that. Our subconscious just hears, it hears when we're saying these things. It brings it in.
So what you're saying is we can give ourselves hypnotic suggestions without realize what we're
Exactly.
doing. Yeah.
Self hypnosis.
Yeah.
And yeah. And that's the thing. You start to believe things too.
Mhm.
So I kind of also fell into this one where, I wanted to lose weight. And now think of that statement. I wanted to lose weight. That was just naughty of me right now. So I want to lose weight. Think about what your subconscious can hear from that. Lose weight. Wait a
Mhm.
minute. I don't want to lose weight. I don't want to lose anything.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that would be not a good thing to have my subconscious hear. But
Mhm.
maybe I would change that. And maybe what would be better to say is, I want to be healthy. I wanted to get healthy.
Mhm.
So that's better. That feels good. And, so I was, teasing my friend, and he says, well, what size do you want to be? I'm like, I don't know, a 10. And he goes, okay, you are perfect size 10. And I'm like, ha ha ha, I'm perfect size 10. Ha ha. And then, the next day we were talking, and he like shows me a cheesecake he made. And I'm like, oh my God, I love cheesecake. He's like, well, sorry, perfect size 10 doesn't eat cheesecake. And I'm like, oh, right. And so then it was funny, but then I started like taking that on. I'm like, perfect size 10. Okay. And then I started saying it all day long. I'm like, well, does a perfect size 10 snack on crackers?
Mhm.
No. Does a perfect, and then does a perfect size 10 wear these shoes or those shoes? And then I started to believe I was a perfect size 10, and then my body caught up to it.
Hmm.
So that's how hypnosis works. That's the
Okay.
real thing. So when people say I don't believe in hypnosis, I'm like, how do you not believe in that? I mean, all you're doing is changing the way that you think about things, and then improve your life. So
Yeah, I guess like what you were saying earlier, when we think about hypnosis, we think about Hollywood, and we think about, becoming unconscious, and and I frankly, I have to admit, because I was looking at your website earlier before we got on the interview, and I was looking at hypnosis, and my whole thing is always tell people, I don't know if I could be hypnotized, because I've done like, guided meditations and facilitate after death communications and that kind of stuff. And other people will seem to go deeper than I do. So I'm sure you probably have people come to you and say, you can't hypnotize me.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that you don't need to be deep to
Okay.
hypnotize. I could be hypnotizing you now. You don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about hypnosis is that you're in control.
Mm-hmm.
Always you're in
Yeah.
control. And that if your subconscious doesn't want, to do something, it won't.
Mm-hmm.
So I can never in a million years hypnotize you to stand on the table and bark like a dog if you don't want to.
Right.
You
Right.
always have power. So it's not something where you're out of control. It's the opposite. You're actually taking control. And that's the thing is on movies in Hollywood, they're showing, zombie people and
Right.
people. And the truth is, if you look at, even stage hypnotists where they get a whole bunch of people and they get on stage and you're like, oh my God, I could never do that. And it's like, well, that's why he didn't choose you. Because, well, I don't know if have you ever been to a stage hypnosis show?
I haven't. No, I've just seen him on TV.
Okay, so in the beginning, what they do, and now I'm revealing a little trick. What they do is they do these tests to see how hypnotizable you are. So they'll ask you, to stand up. They'll give you some commands, and they're watching for people that follow them.
Okay.
And they know which ones, because it is real. What they're doing is real.
Right.
But the point that's important is that these people want to do it. Believe it or not, they don't have an issue getting up and barking like a dog or playing. They're not shy.
Right.
So they're looking for those people in the audience, and they have a way to test it. So yes, everybody, if you experience what I mentioned before, things like where you were watching a movie, you didn't realize someone left the room or came in, or you missed an exit, then you are hypnotizable.
Yeah, well, it happens to me all the time. I'll get someplace and have no idea how I got there. Or I just get in my car and I start driving, and then I'm like, why am I here? Because I get on a certain path and I start going to the place I usually go when I'm on that path, and I forget to turn off to go to the other place.
Right. So you can be hypnotized.
Yeah. And just the other day I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw a tuna melt. Guess what I had for lunch? I had a tuna melt.
I love it. Yeah. See, we need to start hypno marketing. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, exactly. So I have to admit that, it does work. We were talking, earlier, and we have, kids about the same age. And we're talking about what's going on right now with the, the coronavirus and how it's changing all of our lives. So is there any way that hypnosis could play in to help us as we're going through this time of stress?
Well, yeah. I use with my daughter waking hypnosis on her all the time. And this comes from my heart, and I'm just careful of the way that I say it. But, she's a millennial, and a lot of millennials are, and I'm sure a lot more than just millennials, but people are feeling like this is the end of the world. And I talked to her and, kind of got her attention. So that's hypnosis, is focused attention. And I basically just told her, there's another way to look at this. This is an opportunity where you can reinvent yourself. It's an opportunity for you to, make sure that your compass is pointing in the right direction. It's, there's so many people out of a job right now, losing people. When you're at a job and you've worked there for many, many years, you really can't reinvent yourself, because people know you and they're familiar with you one way,
right? That
if you change your socks that day, they'll know you changed your socks.
They won't let you. Yeah. They'll push you back to where you were. Yeah.
Exactly. So it could be, well, I don't even say it could be. I'm telling her it is a very good time. It's a good time because everybody's going through this. And so it's your choice how you want to react to this situation. Do you want to sit here in paralysis and fear, or do you want to go out there and make a difference, in yourself? And it's almost, I don't know if people believe in a higher source or God, but I kind of do feel this, presence that's kind of guiding us, like, even the earth, they talk about how, because we're not driving, even the earth gets to breathe nicely now. So this could be a really great opportunity for all of us.
Yeah, a chance for a reset. Yeah, I think it's a great way to look at it. And I think it's interesting because I've had similar conversations with my daughter. We found out her kids are about the same age, but I don't think of it as hypnosis. I guess it's just it's just me having a conversation with. But I am giving her suggestions, right? Like you said, a different way to look at it. And you mentioned earlier millennials. It's not just millennials. The thing is, when we have some experience, we can realize, we've been through this before, and it may make it a little easier. But I admit I've been up and down during this time too. I just heard yesterday they said we might have to live like this for 2 more years. And I'm like, oh no, I don't want to live like this for 2 more years. And I just had like a little bit of a panic. So, I'm constantly trying to do self-talk. And I guess maybe that's self-hypnosis. Like,
this is
the way you have to look at it. take it one day at a time. We'll get through this. We've gotten through it before. I'm sure when they were going through the 1918 flu pandemic, they felt like it would never end, but
Right.
it did. And everything
did.
ends. Everything ends at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. Oh, I was going to give you anybody that has younger kids, or actually I still use it for my older kids. But here's a good tip for hypnosis. On your way to washing the dishes in the sink, take out the garbage. Great suggestion. Great suggestion. It's hypnotic.
Yeah.
It's like, while you're washing the dishes, when you're done, take out the garbage. That's hypnosis right there.
Wow.
And look what you get. You get clean dishes and garbage taken out.
Yeah, that's tricky. I like that. Well, I actually lost something in my house the other day, so I'm going to see if I can find it. I was going to give you a test and see if you can tell me where it is, but I won't do that to you.
Oh, yeah, no, on the spot. Oh, yikes. It's good.
But this is really, like I said, it's really interesting, Michelle, talking to you because when we hear remote viewing, I think of, military. I think of trying to find targets, maybe missing persons. But I really like the way you expanded that whole thing into really, I think it's tapping into your intuition, which I'd never heard it put that way before. And your subconscious and this I think deeper wisdom that we all have. So it makes me interested to want to find out more about it. And I know you teach a course in remote viewing that's offered on your website. So what's that course about?
So it is a 6-week course. We meet on Saturday mornings for 2 hours, and I take you through the process, and we jump right in right away. So you're going to start remote viewing right away. And what I'm looking for is I want to put together a team so that we can be operational, because I get a ton of calls from people, all sorts of people, detectives, government, everyday people like yourself. And I'd like to have a reliable team that we can, make some money, from some of these things. Mama needs a new pair of shoes money, but, not a ton of money, but just a little.
So you do get paid for the events or for the jobs that you do. That's fantastic. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Some I do, some I don't. Like if it's a missing person, but if it's a corporation that wants us to look at their financials, I'm like, yeah, show me the money.
Wow.
So,
okay, cool.
But yeah, definitely, there's something there.
Yeah. So let me give everybody your website, because I'm not sure I did before. It's butterflyeffectcenter.com. And I'll put that in the show notes. But you can go there. You can find out more about Michelle. She does offer the remote viewing class and also hypnosis for people that want to do hypnosis and past life regressions and weight management.
Yep. Sounds good.
So I know you're getting ready to launch a new endeavor as an entertainment publicist. Tell me about that.
Yes. So I'm really excited. So I am starting a business that, I was kind of starting it on the side, but it's kind of taking off. So there's a lot of authors out there that are finding that they publish a book, and because the companies don't have a lot of time or resources to spend on booking the authors, they, once the book drops for the first couple of months, they'll help them out, but then they don't anymore. Yeah. And so in dealing with at Midnight in the Desert, our Bell show, I met so many people, and they were all complaining, like, I can't, I have no publicity. Nobody hears my book. I don't get on shows. I don't go to conferences, things like that. I thought, gosh, I can help you guys because I'm connected with lots of people.
Oh, wow.
So that's what I do. I help, authors. I don't charge an arm and a leg, I understand. And I help everybody just get connected, and when they have something to say, something important to say, I want them out there to talk to many, many people.
That's awesome. So will you be doing that through your Butterfly Effect Center website, or is there another place to go?
No, I'm
Okay.
not yet. I'm building the website
Okay.
this week and next week, and it will be ready to launch very soon.
All right.
And yeah, that's what. And we have another radio show that we're doing now. If people want to listen, it's called Midnight Society,
Okay.
and it's the midnight.fm. And if you like the strange and weird stuff, we talk about all sorts of cool stuff: UFOs, Bigfoot, aliens, consciousness, remote viewing, everything. And this Friday, we're going to have Deborah Lynn Katz on talking more about remote viewing and all the research.
Okay. Well, I don't. This won't be out by this Friday, but
Okay, never
we're recording
mind.
this on Wednesday, May 6th. So,
Okay.
yeah, maybe you can find it in the archives or something after it comes out.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Well, Michelle, it's been really great getting to talk to you and learning a lot more about remote viewing and hypnosis. Two very fascinating subjects I think can help people out, in more ways than maybe we realized when this episode started.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. I had a lot of fun talking about what I'm obsessed with. So it's always good for me.
Yeah. Well, anything else you want to say to wrap up?
No, just everyone, keep their chin up and just be positive. Good things and beauty and magic happens.
Yeah, really great. That's a great way to end. Thanks, Michelle. You have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I want to make it really easy for you to reach me. So just send me a text to 31996 and simply text the word growth, GROWTH. In fact, you can right now just say, "Hey Siri," send a message to 31996. And when Siri asks you what you want to send, just say growth. You can do the same thing with OK Google. Thanks a lot. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for listening to Grief to Growth. Brian hopes that you find this episode helpful and will come back for future episodes. Brian's best-selling book, Grief to Growth, Planted Not Buried, is a great resource for anyone who is coping with grief or knows someone who is. If you enjoy the podcast and would like to support it, there are 3 things you can do to help. The first is to share the podcast with someone that you think it will help. The second is to go to iTunes, rate, and review the episode. The third way you can support the podcast is by becoming a patron. Head over to www.patreon.com/grief2growth. That's patreon.com/grief, the number 2, growth, and sign up to make a small monthly donation. Patrons get access to exclusive bonus content and knowledge that you are helping to spread the message of grief to growth. For more about Brian and Grief to Growth, visit www.grief2growth.com.
Hi there. I hope you enjoyed this latest episode of the podcast, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. What questions came up for you? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? I invite you to visit us at grieftogrowth.circle.so. That's grief, the number 2, growth.circle.so to continue the conversation with me and with other listeners. It's a space to sound off, to share reactions, and to go deeper into the topics from the show. I look forward to chatting more, and I hope to see you there.